Hey guys, before we start the show, can you feel something changing in the air? It smells a little different when you walk outside. It's getting, maybe in some parts of the country, we're getting a little colder out. You know what that means? It means it's football season. It's coming upon us, and maybe not all libertarians love football, but it's okay to love football. It's okay to need a distraction from the craziness that we all have to deal with in today's modern world. And what we do on Lines of Liberty, we have a great bonus show called Degenerate Gamblers. Myself, Brian McWilliams, and Rico, we go through our weekly bets every week. We have a league that we have with our Pride members where we're competing against each other. You can get into that. You can get involved in that if you want to. And we have a show every week too, of course, where we're talking about those bets and games and telling old college stories. It's a really, really freaking awesome show. But on top of that, we've teamed up with an awesome sponsor, Football Insider Edge, and we're going to bring you a deal. Now, these guys are bringing great content. They have a great community, awesome research. And what we're offering with them is, as supporters of this show, they are currently offering you a 20% discount on any of their monthly or full season plans on their website. Just go to footballinsideredge.com and use code LION in checkout to take advantage of this discount today. Doesn't matter if you're just a fantasy football player, if you're a DraftKings or FanDuel, or if you're a degenerate gambler, if you like to bet on every single game. These guys have the content for you to take your gambling, to take your fantasy football to the next level. Check out footballinsideredge.com and use code LION at checkout to get a discount on a monthly or full season package today.
We are born free, and we will die free. The time in between, though, that's complicated. In that time, governments, institutions, and our egos will limit our ability to find true freedom in this life. These are real stories of real people overcoming the odds, persevering in justice, and unlocking their potential. Welcome to Finding Freedom. Here's your host, John Oderman.
All right, my guest today on Finding Freedom is Mike Worton. Mike and I have been friends. We've been friends for a while, and we've had some interesting conversations in the past that have not been recorded. And, with everything happening in Afghanistan recently and the pullout and how messy that was and the 20 years being at war, I wanted to bring someone on the show who had firsthand experience on the ground there, a firsthand account, and Mike fits that bill. He has served in the Air Force since February of 2012. He was in Afghanistan from February 2014 until July 2014. Also served in Kuwait, Jordan, Qatar, and the UAE. When he was in Afghanistan, he spent most of his time at the Bagram Air Force Base, hopped around over there as well to different places, worked as a civil engineer and a volunteer medical worker on the base. He's currently a staff sergeant, and he's also trained as a crane operator, firefighter, and EMT. Mike, welcome to Finding Freedom.
That's great to be on. Can you hear me all right?
Thanks. Yeah, I can hear you good.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming on the show. And before we get into talking about Afghanistan, that'll probably be a lot of the show and talking about the military in general, most likely. Let's start with you. I know that, we have similar, ideological, philosophical backgrounds when it comes to politics and things of that nature. But where did you start growing up? What kind of household did you grow up in politically?
So I grew up in a pretty Republican household. My great-grandfather was actually a important person in Republican politics. He, back in the 60s, was a prominent party member in Michigan, being an acquaintance to Governor George Romney, Mitt Romney's dad. He had met Vice President Nixon before. He went to the 1968 Republican convention, got laughed off by people because he said Ronald Reagan was going to be president one day. He was the mayor of a small town for about a decade, and also its police chief. And when he left office, the guy that replaced him was so bad that they wrote my great grandfather back in on the next election, and he had to serve another year because of just popular support.
Oh wow!
And so he was sort of my mentor in all this because he lived to be 103, so he didn't die until I was 21. So I got to know him very well, and I didn't have either of my grandfathers. So it was my great grandfather that I learned a lot from. And I drifted.
That's amazing in itself. Just to pause you there. I mean, to get that type of, generational experience from a great grandfather. I mean, I didn't come close to meeting my great grandfather. He passed away long before I was born. So that's a really unique experience.
Oh yeah, for sure. He was, he was a significant figure and that sort of thing. He was just a domineering guy too, and he was like 6'3", broad shoulder. He looked very much like Trump's body type, and he was a very domineering figure in society. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. So, he was a Republican then. So what were some of your other influences? Because I know, I mean, and people maybe give you crap for it. I don't. For kind of you supported Tulsi Gabbard in her run for president, right? So you're not locked into one lane. So you can kind of talk about talk about your views around that.
So I would say, like, ultimately my political viewpoints come from sort of all over the place, but it's more or less outlying figures, and oftentimes like in the 2008 elections, and even in like 2011 and early 2012, I was still a proud supporter of Mitt Romney. It was because, because George Romney is my favorite governor in history. And that's the kind of person I want to be when I run for Michigan governor in the future. And that's a lot of the, because he was definitely this ideal leader sort of in how he approached things. Mitt obviously doesn't meet that standard, but at the time, I was younger, and it was my first presidential election, and I was very late to the Ron Paul train, and I didn't really. It was 2011 and 2012. I was sort of adopting a lot of that into my viewpoints, and by the time I sort of converted to the Ron Paul thinking strategy, it was a little late. But I mean, it's still Ron Paul has played a huge role in transforming me from being, a kid growing up during the War on Terror and kind of being a Bush supporting neocon to being more influenced with the ideals of liberty. And so I look at that. Ron Paul has been a huge transformation in me. I was living in Missouri when I luckily met with Austin Peterson, and I became friends with him. And I was on his presidential campaign in 2016. And it was just amazing to see, this out of nowhere campaign get launched in late 2015 and then grow to a 6-figure campaign that got national media attention in what should have just been fizzled out easily.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. I was thinking about that recently, how Austin Peterson really did pretty much come out of nowhere. Like, I remember his early videos when it would just be him, like, just sitting at his laptop, just talking stream of consciousness. And to be able to launch basically his entire political career from that. Pretty incredible, really.
Yeah, he was definitely the early adopters of live streaming when it came to campaigning. And, before him, I didn't know of anybody, maybe like Cory Booker, maybe because he was kind of on top of, tech trends and stuff. But I didn't see any politicians really taking hold of that. And then after 2016, you just see like everyone doing it now. And
even Elizabeth Warren. And
God, the drinking.
Good to go get me a beer. Yeah.
Communicate with someone with a Darth Vader picture. Anyway, that campaign really opened me up, and it made great connecting friendships with a lot of people who are probably going to be listening to this. Aside from that, though, during the 2020 timeframe, I was very supportive of several of the Democratic figures. I mean, honestly, I don't know anyone who didn't support a single Democrat, just because there were so many. There were 29 of them. I mean, like, even the most hardcore Republican would be like, oh yeah, I like Tulsi. So,
yeah, I mean, not even. No, I know what you mean. Like, because we went through the brutal exercise of, I think we watched almost every single one, and did a reaction show to them, which was crazy. But yeah, along the lines of doing it, there was different characters who would kind of rise to the top, like Marianne Williamson, who was like,
I love her.
She's kind of insane, but she's saying some things that point out how absurd the Democrat Party is. But since then, she's kind of even lost her way more than that. But
she has definitely fallen off, and like the last few weeks, it's been hard to watch. You know what? And before we get on to everything with Afghanistan, I do have to make the note of a lot of the left-leaning people, and I also have to even say, like, to me, I feel like I've ascended a lot in political thought, and I don't even like saying left and right anymore because I don't believe in those concepts. But for the perceived leftist, viewpoints, there were so many people good on that side that had like good perspectives, and then like this Afghan withdrawal happened, and these people became Biden shills like overnight. The biggest ones I know of was Crystal and Sagar, and I'm like, you guys were the chosen ones. It's like, and they immediately just started simping for Biden, and it was horrible. Yeah.
Well, didn't even Tulsi come out and support Biden? Did she end up endorsing him?
No. I think a lot of people misconstrue that. When you actually go back and you watch what she said. So what ended up happening was she was going to support Bernie. Bernie told her no. And Tulsi was like, okay, I know the writing on the wall. Just go vote for Biden, people. Like, she never explicitly said, I support Joe Biden. She never said, I endorse Joe Biden. She just said, just go support the nominee. Like, that was it. And honestly, if you're a Democrat, you're kind of stuck in that position because, mind you, she's a sitting Democratic politician. You kind of have no choice in that matter unless you do it like Justin Amash did and abandon the party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which maybe she should have done, because I mean,
she should have. Yeah,
because the Democrats, I mean, she has no future in that party. I mean, it's not what she talks about is not aligned at all with the party. But anyway, we could talk about that type of stuff the whole show. But let's get into your military background. So, why did you join the Air Force? What motivated you, inspired you, persuaded you to go that route?
Well, if you really want to know the truth, it is because of the upcoming anniversary on Saturday. Okay. I was 9 years old when 9/11 happened. I was in elementary school. It was 5th grade gym class. We were outside, and just after 9 o'clock, it was remarkably beautiful. I think that's what everyone agreed about that day, was that was one of the most beautiful days ever. And we were playing outside. It was gym class, all that stuff, and we got called in. And we're coming in, and as we're coming in, I don't remember if it was when I was coming in or if we were already in the gym, but I could hear the jets take off in the distance because we were only a couple miles away from the base I serve at right now. And at the time, they had F-16s. Those F-16s, I didn't know this until years later. Those F-16s had orders to go track down Flight 93. When we were left in the dark the whole day. The teachers wouldn't tell us anything. So we were just told something happened in New York. Something happened at the World Trade Center. Mind you, I was an architectural nerd as a kid, so I was one of the only people who knew what that was. So much so, I think I was the only person in the whole school who knew about the 1993 bombing there. And the teachers were like, "Oh, yeah, it's just like that." And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
The only reason I knew about that 1993 bombing is because of the Biggie Smalls song. He talks about blowing up the World Trade Center. A lot of people think that's talking about 9/11 because they don't understand time frames. But anyway.
So anyway, I'm walking home with my best friend at the time. We were talking about the whole thing, and I get back to my house, my sisters are all around the TV, they're crying, and I'm looking at the TV, and I see this big pile of smoke from New York. I know the Manhattan skyline looks like, and I'm like, where's the World Trade Center?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I had to have everything explained to me, and I started crying at that point in time. So October 7th of that year was the day before my birthday, and so I'm just about to turn 10, and that's when we go. It's when we start attacking Afghanistan. 10 years to that day, the day before my 20th birthday, I enlisted in the Air Force, and I left in Feb to go in Valentine's Day the following year to basic training. 2 years after that, I'm almost to the day I'm actually in Afghanistan. So I'm 22 at the time. I get there, and so it was a 6-month deployment, but with the additional of training, it ended up being 7 months. And I spent like 1 month traveling around to different countries because they couldn't get my team in the right place, or we were needed elsewhere. And then we finally got to Afghanistan. And while I was there, I was initially on troop construction. Then I got placed onto rubber removal.
What does that mean? What does that mean, troop construction?
Oh, so I'm sorry, I should explain things. So I'm a civil engineer. And while I was over there, I was a part of the Expeditionary Civil Engineering Squadron. And within that, I was part of a thing called EPBS, which was the Prime Beef Squadron. Everything was based out of Qatar, but we would then go to Bagram, and Bagram was the central point for Afghanistan, which then you would be put out to other bases. It's a complex thing in CENTCOM.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm, what do I want to say? I am over there in February of 2014. I get there. I am working on building projects.
Let's back up for a minute. So,
oh yeah, sorry.
So no. I should be asking the questions. I'm the host of the podcast, but I mean, just to dig into this, so you covered a lot there. You talked about the motivations of being burned into your mind, what happened on 9/11, and that's sticking mm-hmm. with you all the way through. So you're 22 years old, and you find yourself in Afghanistan. I'm just curious. So when you were there, 22 years old, did you still have like in your mind at that point in time, the reason you're there is because, you were, righting the wrongs of the past, trying to really get retribution isn't the right word, but
no,
I mean,
I never enlisted for the American retribution aspects. Mm-hmm. My original intention for enlisting in the military was to better myself physically, mentally, and emotionally. I was the kid that was picked on in school every day. I was, very weak. I was very sheltered. I was a stereotypical nerd, getting bullied all the time. Enlisting in the Air Force has definitely changed my entire life perspective. I'm relatively physically fit. Of course, I can always be better. But mm-hmm. I mean, you and I talk health all the time. Yeah. Undoubtedly, I am more physically fit than a good 92% of the population. Before enlisting in the military, I could barely run. I couldn't even go a lap around the track. Now, today, I just finished 7.5 miles. Nice. Thank you. And a lot of the stuff I started in the military, and then being in the military got me into reading books. It got me into audiobooks. It got me into studying different aspects of life. If I had gone a typical college route after high school, I would have been stuck in probably a profession I didn't like. Sure, I may have a bachelor's degree, but I'd be upset. I don't have a bachelor's degree right now, but I have a wide variety of skill sets, knowledge, training. There's almost nobody who has the skill sets I have in my combination. Mm-hmm. And I kind of broke through like a lot of stereotypes. Like I may be a nerd still. You can tell by what's behind me. um, but like my career field is pavements and heavy equipment operations. I'm a construction worker. I work with the country boys, with their pickup trucks and their dip that they chew and their constant drinking and stuff. And here's me. I've never drank in my life. I've never smoked. I've never done drugs. Yet I'm I'm good friends with all these people, and I work consistently with them, and I know how to build a road. I know how to maintain roadways. I know how to operate equipment. And it's kind of like that amazing part in the military is you can break down these types of barriers and stereotypes and separations and such. And I know a lot of libertarians, they don't like the idea of the military, but there are a lot of aspects within the military that I think turn people into libertarians. Look at how many veterans have become prominent libertarians.
Yeah. Well, how much of that? I do agree with you. It's indisputable. You look at, there's so many people who have gotten their lives right in the military, needing that discipline, needing that focus. But on top of that, how much of, people joining the military, becoming libertarians is when you're in there, and maybe you can talk about this in Afghanistan, what you see while you're over there, what you see, you see the reality of the way things are. So your experience in Afghanistan, did that change your views of, foreign intervention in other countries, things like that?
So Afghanistan has always been a crux for me ever since I got back 7 years ago. And the last, was it been 3.5 weeks now? Since the fall of Kabul, essentially. Since that point in time, the past week I've gotten better. But before then, I was going through a very deep bout of depression. I was crying myself to sleep a few days. I was getting just deeply emotional seeing the scenes, especially when the 13 troops died. I think I just about lost it then, because a part of me had sort of like this survivor's guilt sort of thing, feeling like I should have been over there to help them, to protect them. I think it's just in that mentality now because I'm a firefighter and I have the medical training now, and I just feel like it's my duty now. It's my duty to be a hero in some regards, and I feel like I failed the people of Afghanistan. I failed our troops. I failed everything, because I wasn't there to help. But I also know the futility of that statement. I also know this was always a disaster. This was always a house of cards that was going to come down. And I just finished a book. I forgot the guy's name. But it's called The Afghanistan Papers. It came out last week. I had made a post about it. I don't know if you'd seen it. I recommend everybody who's listening to this, please buy this book or get the audiobook, which I did. It is the best account of the war, and it showcases that the whole thing was always a disaster, even before I was there. It was like a disaster from day one.
So it's called The Afghanistan Papers?
Yes.
It's by Craig Whitlock. Does that sound right?
Yes, Craig Whitlock. Okay. Yes. Thank you. It just came out. He was actually on Bill Maher a couple weeks ago. The whole book, it details the account of the last 20 years. And sorry, I said something. So it details the account for the whole last 20 years of the war, and how we just wasted all this spending and wasted all these lives for nothing. It was always going to be a failure. He has a great analogy about how the amount of money we were spending in Afghanistan was similar to when you're filling up like a generator and you're using a funnel and you're overfilling the funnel and all the gasoline spills out.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what we were doing with money in Afghanistan. We were putting so much into Afghanistan that eventually it was detrimental to be spending that kind of money. The people didn't know what to do with it. The warlords were just kind of pocketing it all. The Afghan police forces.
There's this one video that it could be old, it could be new, and who knows? Maybe it's not even from Afghanistan, but it seemed like it was. It was supposedly the Taliban shooting the video, showing, panning around, showing all these guns on the floor that have been left there, and then panning around and showing just stacks of cash, just tightly, like wads of hundreds, millions of dollars stacked up, if it's real, which I assume it is.
It probably is. I mean, the amount of money that's in Afghanistan, there's got to be at least, at a minimum, hundreds of millions of dollars in cash just lying around in some places. Because you got to think, we spent between $1 and $2 trillion there. By all estimates. I mean, I'd even said something before. It's imagine if you had spent just $300 million once in Detroit to fix infrastructure. Now imagine spending that kind of money every single day for almost 20 years. It really is disappointing knowing that you could, and I'm not for big government infrastructure projects. I'm not saying the government should be spending this money, but I am saying that money definitely would have been more beneficial spent here at home than it ever would have been spent over there. Without
a doubt. Yeah. I think anybody with a, it's just rational. I mean, I think Ron Paul would say that all the time, like not coming out in favor of infrastructure projects, but I mean, wouldn't you rather, if you're going to spend money in a foreign country to blow things up and then rebuild it, wouldn't you rather just not blow it up, not have to rebuild it, and just have the money here? Ideally, not tax it at all, so the people can just spend it.
Yeah. Oh, there's even like a thing about that in the book where the Afghan. It was a member of the Taliban was brothers with someone in the Afghan government who was getting like contracts for building constructions. So the Taliban would blow up a bridge, and then the guy with the contracts would come in and rebuild it. And so it was kind of like a Keynesian model.
I'm sure there's a ton of that shit that goes on.
Oh, easily, yeah. And you just gotta think, there were probably thousands of people in Afghanistan who just made millions of dollars. And ultimately, it was all detrimental. It was so terrible. And then this is where I would like to get in with the one thing. I'm not going to claim expertise. When I was there, I was just a senior airman. I'm in no real position to speak on this because I hold no authoritative rank or anything like that. But when I was there as a civil engineer, I was a part of certain projects. And I can tell you without a doubt, the biggest military blunder of my lifetime, like single military blunder. I mean, there's much bigger. I mean, like invading Iraq is much bigger military blunder. But if you were to say one single decision that could have prevented a lot of issues, it was giving up Bagram early on.
Why do you think? Not to get conspiratorial, but so that's what everyone seems to say. So why did that happen?
To be perfectly honest, I cannot give an answer to that. I would just chalk it up to Helen's razor, or, I don't attribute it to malice. I attribute it to incompetence. Oftentimes it's just military incompetence. And I think it was this notion of, well, we're going to leave, and then, we're just going to have this small residual force that's going to be protecting our staff at the embassy or something like that. And no, like you should have known that this government was going to collapse. You should have known the Taliban were going to take over quickly. Like this was an inevitability. And so instead of, like, there were so many things you could have done to prevent all of this. Like you should have been the was it the Panjshir resistance north of Kabul. Like, you should have been, because of the historical precedents, in the pre-2001 invasion, like, they knew that place was going to be a place of defense against the Taliban. They should have been reinforcing it and like sending weaponry and personnel there in preparation. Like, okay, this government may collapse. How about we send like 10,000 troops here? Not American, but like Afghan troops that are like going to be like committed to the cause. And instead, like, the whole Afghan army just rolled over, and like there was no preparation for a retreat point or to create like a stronghold. And so thankfully one just kind of happened, but like there should have been preparations for that. There was no real safeguard for any of this. The Biden administration was lying through their teeth for months. Like, everything's okay. It's like Naked Gun, where Frank Draven's like, "There's nothing to see here," and like all the fireworks are going off behind him, and like people are on fire.
That's the part that is just. It would be unbelievable if you haven't just seen everything that this government has done in these past 10, 20 years. But yeah, for Joe Biden to say, like, basically there's no chance the Taliban takes over quickly. We have plenty of time. And then for it to just be like, what was it, like a week they took over essentially?
It happened so fast that like when you actually like go back and you look at it, the actual strategy the Taliban was implicating was like worthy of being taught alongside like the tactics used by Alexander the Great. Like, it was fantastically brilliant.
They had a lot of time to think about it. I mean, they had 20 years to plan this out. Yeah.
But like, if you really want to know, like, this was probably even like faster than Blitzkrieg. Like, this was so fast. Like, them putting all the like, it appears that Biden was trying to play like Candyland while these guys were playing either Risk or chess, and it's like. Yeah, everyone's always talking about like 4D chess, and I'm like, well, this guy's using like 6-dimensional Risk with Monopoly pieces and Game of Life rules. Like this is the brilliance of the Taliban, and this is not praise for them. I'm not supportive of them at all. I am fearful of what's going to happen for the Afghanis, but you have to give credit where credit's due. They planned all this brilliantly to the point of, when they started the process of taking over, I think that they were kind of frightened about how fast they were going, because the whole government just sort of fell so fast that people didn't even realize it was almost like there was no government at all.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. I didn't realize how many Americans were over there in living in Afghanistan or on trips. There was like a school trip from California that was in Afghanistan. What the heck are people thinking? Like,
well, I will say this: Afghanistan's absolutely beautiful. I had said when I was over there, if it weren't for the political turmoil, this is a place where people would definitely go for vacations. Like, this is where like people would go for spring break if they had the chance. It's stunningly beautiful there.
Well, I'd still rather go to Afghanistan right now than to Australia.
Oh gosh, don't even started on that. I don't know what is going on down there.
I mean, that's kind of a joke, but really not really a joke. Probably would rather go to Afghanistan than Australia. All right, guys, I want to take a quick break in the show today to tell you about a great new sponsor that we have, iTrustCapital. If you're someone who maybe has an old 401k that you moved into an IRA somewhere, when you left a job, you just have the money sitting there. What do you do with it? Try to invest in stocks, whatever other bull crap out there. What if you could invest that money in crypto? Invest it in physical gold and silver? Well, you can do that with iTrustCapital. But with iTrustCapital, you have the tax benefits of an IRA while trading in crypto assets. And on top of that, like I said, you can also have access to buying physical gold and silver into your account. It's amazing. If you sign up using promo code LIONS at iTrustCapital, you'll get the first month free. Now, iTrustCapital is safe and secure. They are backed by Coinbase Custody and Curve to secure clients' digital assets. And They have 320 millions of insurance to make sure your funds are safe and secure. On top of that, they are trusted. They have 1,300 reviews on Trustpilot, and they are 100% transparent in their fees, which, I can't really say that about all other IRA providers. Now, whether you're holding your assets long-term or you want to buy and sell with the market, iTrustCapital's IRA gives your account, or provides the account, the lowest transaction fees for buying Bitcoin or other digital currencies. As an iTrust client, you'll be able to log into your account, make trades 24/7, trades execute in real time, and settle in seconds. They offer more cryptocurrencies than any other crypto IRA provider out there, and they're adding more all the time. Go to iTrustCapital.com, use promo code LIONS for your first month free. So let's dig more into like your experience in Afghanistan, and especially like, I don't know, did you have any interactions with the Afghani people when you were there?
I did have lots of interactions with the Afghanis. Some of it was when I was doing my job. So my job is, as I said, pavements and equipment operator. So I am a construction worker, but I am well versed in all the areas of Air Force civil engineering. And so I would be helping out with a multitude of different other fields, that being like plumbing, structures, electricians, power production, that sort of thing. When I was over there, my first job was, so we would do like a bunch of minor jobs too, transporting equipment and supplies, just operating equipment in certain things, helping build certain things. My first major project though was the construction of what's called an EEPS yard, and this was just a part of the flight line, and it was just a lot of concrete to pour, and it took several pours. It was like 4 or 5. And, it would get hot, it would get dirty. It was hard work, but it was paid off. Although I did learn later on that a mortar hit that, and I was like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. Afterwards, the next project was tore down the flight line fence that was there in order to build a new flight line fence. While also we had a project of, we had a empty spot of land that was like really murky, like muddy, pretty crappy. Our job was to transform that into a helicopter landing zone. Now, with these two projects, I did not see them through the entirety of completion. I was sort of going back and forth onto those jobs because in April of that year, I got put onto a thing called the river removal team. So I flew off to a place called Jalalabad, which is where the Zero Dark 30 raid happened. The mission to kill bin Laden, that was where the base was. There was a very beautiful base. Anyone who's ever been there will tell you it's absolutely beautiful there. When I was there, started doing road removal. What we would do is there was 6 of us on the team. We would get the runway shut down and spray down a chemical in like these little sections. And for like hours, we would utilize pieces of equipment to scrub this stuff in. And then we would put down water and spray like foam and everything like that. And it would essentially remove the rubber from this runway. And this not only was good for appearance, but it was to prevent the rubber buildup that would cause issues for landing and taking off aircraft. So we did that there. Then we went to a place called Shindan, which was near the Iranian border. We were there for about 3 weeks because our flight kept on getting delayed. Then afterwards, we flew back to Bagram. Once I got to Bagram, I was there for a day because I had to go deliver a package. And so I went to a place called Mazar Sharif. And actually, you know what? I have it on my shirt right here. So, let's see.
There you go. Map of Afghanistan. If you're not watching the video, Michael has a map of Afghanistan he's showing on his shirt.
So here's Kabul. Bagram's right north of it. Jalalabad's here. Shindan is near a town called Herat. And here's Mazar Sharif. So I was there for a couple days.
Roughly, if you had to compare Afghanistan to the size of a region in the United States, do you know a rough comparison? Just for Any
I
idea?
probably can look it up, but I mean, I would say it's kind of like the size, maybe like a couple Western states, maybe. I can't say for certain, just because it's very irregular in shape. Maybe it's just like a very big Colorado, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So
Colorado with some other pieces of states scattered around it. Yeah, no, I get you.
Probably, yeah. So, once I got back from Mazar Sharif, I decided, I took the advice of one of the guys I was with earlier on in the deployment, and I decided to volunteer at the medical clinic. So the hospital at Bagram was like the best hospital in the whole country. And I started working off in the ER and the ICU, and I developed a good bond with the other troops that were working there, with the doctors and nurses. And I learned a lot about medical treatment from that. And so this helped prepare me for my time as a firefighter, where I learned to get my medical first responder and then eventually EMT this year. So this kind of like built me up for it. I put in over 50 hours of additional time there. Mind you, this was after working hours. So I would do my work during the day, and then I would go to the clinic at night.
This was your volunteer time. You were volunteering.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Wow.
And so while everyone else was doing downtime, and I would do downtime too, but I would also put in time, an hour or 2 hours there and stuff. Sometimes nothing would happen, and it was very boring. But other times, I would be helping out. Like I had a gunshot wound victim. And they let me treat him. I did a lot of stuff that I probably shouldn't have been able to do until I was like a med school student. It was definitely a great experience.
That's a great example though of, just putting yourself in situations to learn where you are, where you're around people that are, more experienced, smarter than you with respects to doing that type of stuff. That's the position you want to be in. You want to put yourself in those positions.
Oh yeah, I learned from everyone over there. And when I got onto my next team, we were on oh gosh, I can't believe what that team was called. We were building these shelters for, they never specified which one, but it was for a 3-letter organization. Take your pick.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. So we were building these like shelters and stuff. So I got to be like up on a JLG lift, and wearing a hard hat and harness, and basically be like 50 feet up in the air, constructing stuff. And they let me do a ton of stuff. I even when I was back at Bagram, we shut down the runway there, and we were the ones working on it. And so there's not many people that can say, "Oh, I shut down one of the busiest runways in the world to clean it." So that was part of my job there. So the reason why I am so frustrated with all of it is going back to one of the projects I had, which was the helicopter landing zone. That was completed when I was there. We had at least a dozen helicopter pads. The whole reason why we were doing a lot of stuff when we were there was we were centralizing and concentrating resources at Bagram for the drawdown of the forward operating bases. And they were closing a bunch of these camps across the country because there was a lot of smaller camps, basically like outposts everywhere. They were closing all those. They were going to close down all the other bases. Essentially, they were going to centralize everything at Bagram for the inevitable drawdown. This was mid 2014.
So even back in 2014, they're starting to talk about drawdown.
Yes.
Getting troops out. Yeah.
Well, and that's the whole thing. Like, we had a very small force of military personnel, like below 25,000 for like the entirety of the Bush years. It wasn't until Obama came into office that we had the surge of over 100,000 troops. When I was there, it was like 50,000 or so of us in the country. But it wasn't just us there. There were NATO allies. I mean, I met French, I met British, I met I think I met Russian. Yeah. I met Czech Republicans. I met Mongolians.
Wow.
I met people from everywhere. That's the amazing thing. Like, Bagram was like a little UN or something like that. It's like it's an amazing, conjunction of a lot of different people. And then of course, all these people from different branches in the military. I wasn't, when I was at Jalalabad, it was actually one of the funny moments was because I'm an Air Force engineer, I'm always working. And I'm not there to provide security. If it comes down to me defending the base, you already lost the war. So I'm armed. I have my N9 pistol with me, but my M4 rifle is locked up. I only carry it with me for like when I travel. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I'm not carrying this actively because I have to go into pieces of equipment at work. I have to pick up a shovel. I have to pick up a pickaxe. I have to do a lot of work with my hands. So all the army that's there, they can't see my rank very well. They don't know the Air Force ranks. So as I'm walking past them with my pistol, I keep getting saluted. And I'm like, I salute them back just out of like common courtesy. But I'm like, I'm not an officer, guys. I'm not an officer. I'm not an officer. And honestly, the whole when you realize that some places enforce the saluting rule over there, I think that was a really stupid idea because that's like you're begging for someone to get killed.
Why? Because everyone's saluting one person, so they know who to shoot as their.
Oh, well, yeah, the go-to thing is killing the officer because then you kill the leadership. Which, in case anyone hears that out of context, no, I'm not advocating that at all. Don't do that. Right. I'm saying though that is like that paints a target on someone's back. Mm-hmm. And Bagram was horrible in that aspect because it's a place called Disney Boulevard. It's not named for Disney. It's actually named for a troop that had that last name. Unfortunately, he was killed. That was the main road in Bagram. And, it has like this big walkway along it. And you would just see thousands of troops along it, walking the distance. Walking was how you got everywhere in Bagram. We were, as civil engineers, we had our own little compound. That was actually one of our projects too, was like building up like T-walls around there to protect our living area more. We had our own little compound. Other units didn't have that. And we had vehicles. And I'm not just talking about the heavy equipment vehicles. I'm talking about we had like pickup trucks and stuff. So whenever we went to job sites, we all got into the 6-pack. We went to the job site. When we wanted to go to lunch, we all went to the DFAC, the dining facility. When we all, so late at night or late in the afternoon, when I wanted to go volunteer, I said, can I borrow the pickup truck? And they're like, yeah, go take that, bring it back, when you come back. And so I'd load up my gear and I'd go to the hospital. When I get there, they're like, hey, you're always here. How do you get over here? Isn't it like a long walk from your compound? And I'm like, no, I drove here. And they're like, you're kidding. I haven't been in a vehicle since I got here from the PAX terminal. You're allowed to drive, and I came to realize I'm like one of the only people on this base that has the ability to have the government license as well as I have a flight line license. I can do anything on this base.
That's funny.
Oh yeah, it was the same way at my first active duty base. I had access to everything.
So you were talking about how the helicopter landing pad was kind of integral in, one of the reasons why you were so, why the troops pulling out and the 13 officers getting killed, why that was impactful to you. I think you were telling that story. Did we hear that?
So like the 13 troops getting killed, like that was essentially a blunder on the military because they created this chaotic situation at the airport. I don't know for certain if like a bombing like that wouldn't have happened at Bagram because there were attacks at Bagram consistently. Like there were mortar attacks, there were attacks outside the base. I'm not saying that would not have happened, but I am saying 100% certainty the chaos you saw of the Afghanis flooding the airport along the tarmac, along the runway, clinging onto the airplane, never would have happened at Bagram. There's zero chance to get onto Bagram. to get onto Bagram, Bagram is a fortress. It had T-wall protection around about 98% of the border area. The only places that didn't have that were like a very strong, tall fence that sort of like looked out in the area where all you saw were like shepherds with like sheep and stuff in like a field area. So you had these like 20-foot tall walls around the whole base. And then there was the perimeter road. Then after that, there was fencing along there. So it's like an inner fence. Then there's like everything that's in the base. Then when you get to the flight line, there's another fence because we had just put that fence up and it had been about 10 feet. I don't know the specifics exactly. It's been so long. I helped install that fence. It's a barbed wire fence. You're not getting thousands of people over that. And then you finally had this wide, expansive airfield. Even if you got a few people on there, they would not have been able to flood aircraft like that. It would have been impossible, especially since Bagram's not surrounded by a massive city. It's got a small village outside it. But and it's without a doubt that, yeah, you probably would have had lots of refugees come up from Kabul in the thousands, but you would have seen a lot more orderly than you did with what happened at the airport, because the airport is surrounded by a city and we didn't have the personnel to really maintain it as good as we could. Meanwhile, Bagram had all the facilities. It was armed. It had, and I think the airport did have CRAMs, but so did Bagram. Bagram had the CRAM protections. That's the little miniguns that shoot up in the air at any targets that come in.
Right.
And like I said, it's a fortress. It's entirely built to withstand any type of attack. It's got the military equipment to handle all the stuff it did. And then, like I said, it had the helicopter landing zones, and that's not the only place you could land a helicopter. There were other places on base. I'm saying we made an additional dozen or so landing pads for these helicopters. So if they had to evacuate the airport or the embassy like they did, they could have made the trek to Bagram. It might have been dangerous. I'm not saying it wouldn't have been, but at the end of the day, having that secondary point would have been much easier for aircraft to come in and out and for an orderly evacuation. Because, the evacuation itself was humiliating, but then you see how many people died during it. That's just unforgivable.
You have people falling from hanging onto the planes and falling to their death. And then I forget who it was interviewing Joe Biden a couple of days later, brings it up, and Joe Biden's like, that was 4 or 5 days ago. Like, why are we still talking about this? Like,
it's like super bad. It's like people don't forget.
Yeah. So I want to get your opinion on this. So looking at Afghanistan, how this all unfolded, there for 20 years, pulling out of there, just a mess, a disaster. Could have been done, I would think, a lot better, a lot cleaner. Whose fault is it? At this point, it happened. So there's really no point in rehashing it from my perspective. But do you think that the American public seeing all this wasted money, seeing all this equipment left behind, billions of dollars wasted, essentially, do you think that the appetite for war, the appetite for intervening in foreign lands, do you think that the American people don't have that appetite anymore? And when inevitably the regime brings forward another invasion, another war, do you think the American population will push back against it?
That's a very good question, actually. I will say you kind of already saw that back in 2015 with the prospects of Obama wanting to go into Syria. Mm-hmm. If you remember correctly, I think it was 2015. I want to say that's when he was like drawing, he had like the red line in the sand against Assad, and like, they wanted to go in like to take out ISIS. They were talking about an invasion force, that sort of thing. I mean, you already saw like they wanted to do it with Libya too, and they kind of never had the ability to have a full-fledged invasion with that. I think Syria, though, was the nail in the coffin for any further war expansions. I think the double damage of Iraq and Afghanistan after all these years, I will say of any benefit that, yes, the American people are sick and tired of these pointless wars. We've lost countless troops and spent trillions of dollars on these failed conflicts that didn't give us anything beneficial. I mean, you compare that to something like World War II, where it really did feel like the threat of the end of the world was at stake, and we had to put forward this effort to defeat this evil force. And so at the end of the war, despite America losing over 400,000 troops, like, we knew the sacrifices were worth the cost. We defeated evil powers. Like, that was, like, at the end of the day, we knew we had won, even despite all the crap that happens afterwards. But from a realistic perspective, yes, at the end of the day, you can claim World War II was a victory. Meanwhile, you see the countless amount of money and lives and time wasted, and you see it's not worth it. There's no justification. There's zero benefit at all. I mean, even from a resource allocation perspective, I hate to use this argument because I'm anti-colonialism, but part of me wishes at least go into Iraq and take the oil, go into Afghanistan and take the rare earth metals. Like, we didn't even do that. We should have, as much as we despise the Chinese, it's like, at least they've got the Belt and Road Initiative. At least they have a plan for their colonization practices. We, on the other hand, just build up military bases and fund corporatism, and then we just destroy the places.
Yeah, it's really just, I mean, yeah, and I 100% agree with you. We're not saying the United States should be going and stealing resources, but just comparing it to, what China does. What Russia's done to some degree in some places. But it's like just to go into these countries and essentially build up a force and flush money down the toilet, just blow stuff up and rebuild it, blow stuff up and rebuild it. It's insanity. It's complete insanity.
It's lazy colonialism is what it is.
I don't know what it's the broken window fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. It's just blown up to the largest degree. But,
literally blown up.
Yeah, that's not the best comparison, I guess. But Michael, we've been going for about an hour here. Want to give you a chance here before we end to talk about anything that I missed that you wanted to bring up, anything I didn't ask you about, or if there's any parting words that you want to give the audience.
So some of the experiences I had in country over there, I know I haven't been, I know people that were there for much longer time periods, people who spent many years over there on different deployments. Like, if you have the chance, outreach with these people. And I'd like to lump in the Iraq guys as well. They, I have several friends who are Iraq vets, and they are hurting too, because whereas, a lot of people are talking about Afghanistan right now, Iraq just kind of got thrown under the rug, and these guys spent, they were in a much more dangerous situation. Iraq had more casualties. It was a deadlier conflict, and it, even though it feels, it was more than 10 years ago, it still stings in recent memory. So please reach out to the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, anyone who served during the global war on terror, especially now with this 20th anniversary of 9/11. I know libertarians are against certain things like the military-industrial complex with, the bloatedness of the Department of Defense, the federal government, aggressive policing, that sort of thing. But do know that there are a lot of civil servants, public servants out there who do give it their all. They're not greedy people suckling at the taxpayer tit. No, they are serving the public trust. They are doing the right thing in many regards. So please, talk to people who are military veterans, serving members, whether they be active guard or reserve, even like DoD employees, firefighters, EMS personnel, people who work in public hospitals. Everybody is dealing with a hard time right now because public service is seen as only glorified amongst the political class. And the reality of the situation is that the vast majority of public servants are not elected people, but rather doing the day-to-day work that keeps society functioning. And it is these people who should be, I'm not saying glorify them. I'm not saying, give attaboys every single time, they breathe, but definitely take note that they don't get their credit where credit is due. And I feel like that is part of a problem. And I definitely think that as libertarians or liberty-minded individuals, that's people we need to start incorporating, because at the end of the day, and anybody listening to this who disagrees with this, I don't care. Anarcho-capitalism is never going to happen. You're never going to get rid of the government. Just take a look at this pandemic. The government's never going away.
I 100% agree.
Find ways to incorporate more communitarian aspects so that people aren't swayed by things like socialism or communism or big government overreach, but rather how you get people more intricately involved in their communities so they don't need an overreaching government apparatus. It doesn't help us when you say get rid of the government and then people start asking the questions, well, what about firefighters? What about EMS? What about healthcare? You can't make the privatization argument for everything instantaneously because you're always going to have pushback. So understand there is going to be a need for public service, and we can make libertarian arguments for it.
Dude, I could not agree with you more. And I mean, that's been something that has been front of mind for me. And we've been talking about that with Mark and Brian as well. And I mean, it's, of course, if you're in libertarian circles on Twitter, you're hearing about this. I mean, libertarians have been selling this, and not to go way off topic, and you can respond to this too and chime in before we end. But libertarians have been selling this, we'll just leave you alone and you can live your life for decades, and almost nobody's buying it because they don't want it. People want community. People want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. That doesn't mean that we need to start endorsing big government and start endorsing coercion, but it means we need to find ways to lift others up through community, through voluntary means. That's Bingo. All we need to start doing. And we need to start building things on our own and stop, not that political activism is worthless. I think there's a time and a place for it, but I think you're gonna get a lot more bang for your buck, a lot more bang for your labor and your resources in building something in your local community. And like you're doing, you're out there volunteering, and people are seeing you do that. And like when people see you do that and see you put your hand in the pile, you gain a certain amount of respect.
Oh yeah, in my community, I'm now one of the most trusted people in the community. I'm only 29, and if it weren't for my boss, who was the chief of police and public safety director, wanting the job, there was a possibility I was about to become my township supervisor. Township of 50,000 people. Like, the people trust me, so I had an opportunity to get that, and unfortunately I didn't. But maybe I was fortunate because I don't like the politics here. Aside from that, though, I'd like to say two more things. First, anyone listening to this, who, especially if they're young and everything like that, find ways to branch out and get out of a shell. I feel like this isn't just libertarians in general, but rather just everyone who is like a political nerd. It becomes an obsession where everything is politics, and there's less of life being lived. I know you and we talk about health and fitness and, improving our bodies all the time. That's an important niche we need to focus on. Like I said, go out and volunteer, have a diverse set of skill sets. There's a million suits out there who have a poli-sci degree and are pursuing economics or law. Find a way to stand out above the crowd. You gotta be better than everyone else if you want to have your voice heard and your opinions matter. The other thing is, if you want some good things on my viewpoint of certain things, there is a science fiction author who I agree with on so many principles, and I think has so many great viewpoints. If people want to find out that he's very libertarian leaning, his name's Daniel Suarez. he makes what are called techno thrillers. And these are things that revolve around challenging the authoritarian aspects of things like the internet, technology, space privatization, genetic engineering. Some of his books take place in like the near future. Other ones like are decades in the future. I highly recommend anyone listening to this to check out his books. They will give you insights onto things like my combatants of what I call neo-feudalism. That's what the political structure I view the country is heading toward. I can tell you about that another time, though. Other than that, though, just everyone be kind to each other. And like I said, go talk to Afghan and Iraq vets. They need the help as much as everyone else right now.
Sounds good, Michael. Do you want to leave a Twitter handle, Instagram handle, anything for people to reach out to you?
If anyone wants to find me, I am on Instagram at Avatar Mike Phantom.
All right, man. Sounds good. Thanks for coming on the show.
All right. Yes. Thank you for having me, man. And you take care. Stay safe.
Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode of Finding Freedom here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. Of course, if you're new, maybe you don't know, but this is one of 3 shows on the Lions of Liberty podcast. We kick things off every Monday with the show hosted by Mark Claire, our flagship program, longest running program. This past Monday, Mark had an excellent interview with Miles Wakeman. If you haven't heard that, go back, check it out. How to Live Life Unconstrained with Miles Wakeman. A great interview. One of Mark's best, in my opinion, if you missed it. Go back. It was Labor Day. You were probably drunk. Go back and listen. Then on Wednesday, of course, Electric Liberty Land with Brian McWilliams. Brian has been bringing the heat lately. Maybe a little controversial show this past Wednesday. If you missed it, go back, check it out. And if you are missing these shows, maybe you should be subscribing. Yes, you should be subscribing. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, go up, click the follow, subscribe button, whatever it is on the podcasting app that you're listening on. And think about supporting us. I mean, if you're not a member of our Lions of Liberty Pride, you can do that by going to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. As I talked about at the top of the show, we have our bonus shows starting up, Degenerate Gamblers. You can access that. We have a show called Conspiracy Corner, where the guys dig into different conspiracies, always entertaining. You get access to shows early. You get to watch the video feed live of certain interviews. Lots of great content, merchandise, access to the show. You can influence the show, all kinds of different things. And, of course, the Lions of Liberty store. Pride members get a discount. But you can go buy stuff even without being a member of the Pride. You just pay the regular retail price, and you can find that stuff by going to lionsofliberty.store. Check out our maybe greatest design and newest design, the Hands Up, Don't Nuke t-shirt. I love it. Go check it out. Got a little redneck-looking guy on there with the bombs pointed at him with the big print, Hands Up, Don't Nuke. An awesome shirt to get yourself some attention and start some conversation. So check that out, lionsofliberty.store. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for the support. And always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.